Hello everyone and welcome to Comms Hero Week. We're on the last day, unfortunately, but not to say it's not going to be a good one, because I'm really excited to welcome to the stage Gemma Butler, the Marketing Director of CIM, the Chartered Institute of Marketing, if you didn't know. Gemma plays a key role in developing and delivering the organisational strategy for CIM. You may also recognise Gemma as the author of the book Sustainable Marketing, How to Drive Profits with Purpose. So Gemma will be talking with us today on how marketing's role drive sustainable future. So it's great to be bringing both the environmental and sustainable conversation to the table at Comms Hero Week. But just before we jump in, don't forget to use the emojis to share your appreciation and react to the session. There's also the chat function on the right, so don't forget to put your comments in there, and any questions, just jump in the Q&A. So I'll hand over to you now, Gemma. Best of luck.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to start your Friday morning at 9:21 with a nice light topic, sustainable marketing. And now sustainable marketing shouldn't actually be sustainable marketing. It should just be marketing. But today I'm going to be talking to you about how sustainability is driving marketing back to the core of what it should be. And it's really acting as a catalyst for marketers to think differently and reconsider their relationships with stakeholders, both internally and externally. Now, the conversation about sustainable marketing and the role that marketing plays in driving a more sustainable future is growing louder and louder by the day. Now, business hasn't necessarily put its hand up for this, but actually it's being seen as the only real driver for change. And Edelman's Trust Barometer 2021 rated business as the only trusted institution in the feedback they got, with a 61% trust level globally. Now, I know we're facing health challenges and I know we're facing economic challenges, but the challenge around sustainability in the environment is one that if we do not change how we do things, then the rest simply won't matter. Now, sustainability is complex, and the phrase build back better is one that we need to keep front of mind. Brand activism, social initiatives, and environmental initiatives are what organizations absolutely have to be focusing on. And yes, there are multiple areas to be considered, and there is no single business or country or person that can actually make a change all on their own. We have to work together. Now, you'll see areas on this slide where business, and more specifically marketing, has a significant role and should be taking the lead. When it comes to stakeholders, marketing is there to speak and communicate with stakeholders internally and externally. You've got NGOs and partnerships, which marketing are great at creating and collaborating across both internal functions and externally with partners. And then there's ESG, society, metrics, fake news, social media. All of these things are things that marketing really needs to look at when driving that sustainable agenda back into the business. So what is sustainable marketing? Well, one of the reasons my co-authors and myself wrote the book Sustainable Marketing is because we felt that our profession has played a significant role into getting us to where we are today. You know, we've been driving consumption levels up through the roof, you know, with regards to purchasing. We've been shaping consumer behaviours through social marketing in terms of buying more, removing friction from that customer journey chain. And this is leaving behind unsustainable levels of waste. Now, marketing is also seen by many as the function that works at the end of the funnel, advertising and selling people stuff they probably don't want. I binged Mad Men in lockdown 1, and that was really eye-opening, seeing how advertising was really seen as the central thing that marketers did. But actually, we do so much more. So we believe through sustainable marketing, which is a different mindset, is that marketers now have the power to use their powers for good, really. We need to be the supervillain, not the supervillain, sorry. We need to be the superheroes, not the supervillains. We need to shape new behaviors. We need to use social marketing to change how people think and behave, because we have all developed this really unhealthy relationship with consumption and purchasing things. Social marketing has been used to change behaviors in relation to smoking, in relation to obesity. So why not use it to break this cycle of make and sell and dispose? We need to use our voice and reach to educate, and through communications and through how we communicate, we can really make and deliver some change. And we can get back to the heart of what marketing is. Marketing is so much more, as I keep saying, and we need to create new ways, whether that's developing new services and propositions, communicating differently to educate our audience, or think about packaging, think about an end of life of a product, think about where it goes after somebody has purchased it. And really, really importantly, we need to use our voice to educate, because education is key here with a subject that is so complex. And we need to get back to the heart of what marketing is and deliver what employees and society want. So as we said in our book, there is no one better placed to effect change, align with and influence customers and drive hope for a better, more sustainable future than an educated, aware and responsible marketer. And we really, really believe this is the case. So what do we need to be aware of? Well, everyone needs to be aware of some of the key things related to the sustainable agenda. We have the Paris Climate Agreement. We have the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm not saying that you need to memorize the 17 goals and the 174 sub-targets that sit underneath those, because not all of those will actually align to what you do within your business and what your business does itself. But as a minimum, goal number 11, which is about sustainable cities and sustainable communities, and goal number 12, which is about responsible production and consumption, should be part of any business agenda. Why do businesses exist and what is the purpose of a business is something that's being hotly debated now. Businesses are here to give back to society as well as the economy. And out of people, profit and planet, I think people and planet have got lost and profit became king. And we've kind of been using all of the resources within our planet and not thinking about the ongoing impact that's having. There's B Corp certification, which I'm sure many of you will have heard of. And this is where a company meets the highest standards of social and environmental impact. And this is gathering a lot of momentum. There are thousands of companies currently going for B Corp certification. And this is a really, really critical part of how we drive change moving forward, because I personally think if you're going to set up any business, you need to be B Corp certified as a mandatory requirement moving forward. And then for us marketers out there and for everyone in the comms world, there's the Green Claims Code, which was announced just last week by the Competition and Markets Authority. And this is going to have a considerable impact on how marketers talk about their products and actually make their environmental claims. Now, the CMA has given us until January 2022 to bring claims into compliance, and it is expected that their initial focus is going to be on areas such as fashion, transport, travel, and FMCG, where there are the most misleading claims. And what the Green Claims Code states is that businesses need to ask themselves 6 things. Are your claims truthful and accurate? Are your claims clear and unambiguous? Do they omit and hide important information? Can you make fair and meaningful comparisons as a consumer? Have you substantiated your claims, and do they consider the full life cycle of the product? I don't know about you, but currently as consumers, trying to navigate sustainable and eco labels and claims is turned into a nightmare. I think there's currently 455 eco labels in circulation, and they're the ones that have to go through to be verified, whereas many marketing labels don't, and we're using words that actually have no true meaning and they're not verified. So I welcome this Green Claims Code, but it's something that I think everybody should be aware of. Then there is the stakeholder change, and in line with the current landscape, there's been a significant shift in power along the stakeholder chain, and it's no longer all about shareholders. Consumers and employees hold way more weight, and when it comes to sustainability, the reports and feedback that we keep reading are very, very consistent. Consumers really want to engage with brands who have a real serious sustainable agenda and aren't just using it as a tick box or a way to sell products. Nearly 6 in 10 consumers surveyed by IBM's Meet the Consumer Report 2020 said they're willing to change their shopping habits to reduce their environmental impact. And over 70% said they would pay up to 35% premium on average for brands that are environmentally responsible. So there's real opportunity there as well. Then there are the employees, now ranked as the most important stakeholder, with 3 times more weight to them than shareholders. And let's face it, without your employees, you are nothing as a business. And they want to work for more sustainable brands. They 65% of respondents in the Unilever 2020 census said that is what they want. And then there are investors. More and more investors want to work with and invest in brands that are not just simply, as I said, tick box exercising sustainability. I recently interviewed the CEO of the UK Sustainable Investment and Finance Association for my podcast, and he spoke about how there is much more understanding by finance investors now on what sustainable business looks like. So they are asking, in their position of active ownership, to see climate targets, to see equality and diversity plans, to see nature and biodiversity plans. And they're making sure that organizations are adding value for the long term, because that's really, really key to what they do. So with that all said, where does marketing impact? Now, I said earlier that marketing is generally seen, or has been seen on the whole, as that part at the end of the funnel, which advertises and sells people stuff. But that's not true. Marketing is so much more than that. And we could have a lengthy debate about what marketing is and what marketing isn't. But from my perspective, the many people I talk to on a daily basis, we're looking for that breadth of where marketing impacts. And that has to start with the custodians of brand. I'm sure many of you have heard the word purpose, which is becoming, a really, really strong word that's being used. When it comes to brand, it's effectively translating, as you'll know, the purpose and value proposition of a business and why we exist and what we stand for. And that really is something that's really important. Brand has evolved from product names and logos to a relationship based on trust. And regardless of what an organization wants its brand to stand for, the actions and evidence and clarity of that brand story is something that actually lives in the hearts and minds of customers. And as mentioned, consumers are growing increasingly more conscious, and thanks to social media and digital technology, we're all more empowered as consumers than ever before. Now, Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's and, the thousands of B Corps that are going through that B Corp certification, they have had the benefit of not starting out with, a do no harm as an ethos from the start. They've built up from the bottom, and this creates significant opportunities. Whereas large established organizations or businesses have been around for a long time, although they haven't, looked at their strategies and gone, we're going to harm the planet, they also haven't started out with a do no harm ethos. And I think, they are effectively going to have to re-engineer and reassess and reverse into purpose. Now, organizations, rather than approaching a purpose with this is a hand we've been dealt with, they need to get back to basics. They need to embed purpose within their organization. It needs to be communicated internally and externally, which is again from a communication and education perspective where marketing really comes in. Now, marketers have a great opportunity to champion getting back to the core of the brand, exploring and uncovering and sharing what your company does and why it makes a difference and why it delivers well-being for all, because that's what people are really interested in. And that is what is going to take us forward to drive sustainable change. And as mentioned earlier, regulation is coming in. The Green Claims Code is going to hopefully stem some of the flow of that greenwash. And we do need to be aware of greenwashing and purpose washing, because, artificial expressions of purpose are ringing true and you will be found out. And then this was a really interesting piece of research that I found with Kantar's Purpose 2020 report, where 76% of marketers believe their organization has a defined purpose, which is brilliant. But only 10% say that this purpose goes beyond their products and services, and doesn't really include a promise to include social commitment. So it's not enough to have a recyclable bottle or something made out of ocean-bound plastic. You have to absolutely go back into the core of your brand, and that's where you start telling your story from. The other place that marketing really impacts and, where marketing should play a critical role is in strategy, because marketing should, I use the word should on purpose, be shaping any organizational strategy. I know from the role I have at CIM that I've been debating for a long time that marketing needs that seat at the top table. And often, marketing struggles to be heard, and our voice and our influence isn't always there. But this is where I think sustainability is going to change that with regards to strategy, because, I think sustainability is acting as a catalyst now. Firstly, as I mentioned, the entire stakeholder chain has changed. It's no longer about those shareholders who are waiting for their payouts. It's now more about the employees, it's about the investors, it's about the customers. And when it comes to strategy, which has to build in all the needs and wants of that entire stakeholder chain, then who better to lead this? Who better to feed back on this? The marketing. And then we talked earlier about sustainable finance and investors. And with investment now dependent on having a core central sustainable agenda at the heart of your business, then, I think there's going to be a much stronger relationship between finance and marketing. Because let's face it, that relationship has been a tricky one for quite some time. As marketing is always seen as the function that spends the money, but now one can't move forward without the other. And marketing's remit spans so much more. We're inputting against all the elements you see on the slide there, the brand story, what the customer wants, who we partner with, what's happening in the supply chain that allows us to deliver a great story. And somebody said, stop storytelling and start story doing the other day when I interviewed them. And then we bring all that data and that market research and insights together, and we talk about the landscape. So, we're really truly positioned to drive that. Another change sustainability brings is the need to ask purpose-linked questions. Now, this is where that different lens and different mindset needs to come into play when it comes to marketing. Whether you're budgeting, whether you're having capital investments discussions, where you're doing proposition development, by putting a different lens on things causes everyone to stop and think and actually avoid short-term moves and short-term fixes. And then that's about collaboration. So, we need to encourage sectors and industries to start working together. Sustainability in some ways is almost competition agnostic, because unless we all work together, we are not going to make the progress we need. So H&M, for example, when it comes to environment, social and governance themes, every organisation should work together. And again, H&M, for example, opened up its supply chain to its rival brands so that they could start to accelerate their own sustainability efforts. I personally think that the supermarkets and the grocers are doing an absolutely phenomenal job of working together. They have the consumers that they can educate with regards to how they sell the products, but they're also doing things like now, I forget which one it was, but they announced that they would not be working, or they would be looking at their suppliers and their supply chains. And if they weren't paying a fair living wage, then they would stop actually putting their products on the shelf. So the supermarket's in a really strong position, and they're reducing packaging, and they've got a long way to go, but I think they as an industry are working really, really well together. So some of the questions that marketing needs to ask to really drive that purpose-driven culture is, what data and evidence is critical to understanding your organization's total social, environmental, and financial impact? How much insight are your current reporting outputs generating about your efforts to deliver on purpose? When was the last time you took an action related in response to a metric about your purpose? And what are you currently not measuring or reporting on that society will hold you accountable for in the future? These are all really important questions to help truly build a sustainable strategy. And then the area where everybody is where marketing is traditionally seen is communication. Now, if you're involved in the strategy and you're involved in building that brand story and why you exist, then the communication and story that you tell from here is going to be so much more powerful and so much more authentic. Again, authentic is a word that we keep coming up against and hearing. So when it comes to external messaging channels, they are more empowered than ever before. We all know the power of social media. I, for one, have, had been on the brunt of the fact that I've had no fuel all week and have been running around where I live like Forrest Gump. But, there is a real powerful shift, and social media is really powerful, and markets are conversations, and consumers are just getting savvier. So We mentioned purpose washing, we mentioned greenwashing. Quite frankly, corporate jargon no longer cuts it. People want authenticity. Communication needs to be human, especially when we're focused on sharing purpose. Now, brands that are playing on their green credentials need to be very, very careful, and moving forward, even more careful. We need transparency. We need to tell people what we are doing well when it comes to sustainability, what we are progressing on, where we aren't progressing, and where indeed we are impacting. Patagonia has the benefit of being, one of the most sustainable brands on the planet, but they sell clothes, and, they call themselves out. They still have an issue with microfibers being released through the washing machines into the water, but they call themselves out and they address up front that they are dealing with it and it's looking into it. A lot of brands are so reluctant to talk about the unsustainable stuff, but we know that it's happening. So just be open and transparent. And then don't forget the importance of internal communication. Effective communication throughout your organizations when it comes to sustainability enables consistent and collaborative understanding. You can drive and implement change so much faster. You really need to educate everybody within your organization by having open conversations and understanding what your employees want, because only by then can you take your purpose beyond your products, beyond your campaigns, beyond your advertising. And hopefully you'll also work out what your organizational impacts are. Recently interviewed someone from Auto Trader, and they were saying that their sustainable agenda and their sustainable conversation and everything they're doing 4 years on was actually driven by just 2 people from the start in their organization that wouldn't let it go. And they have really come on leaps and bounds. And it also, we need to understand that most organizational programs, and it's been proven, the initiatives fail because they're not communicated properly and they don't evoke emotion and they don't gain support. So this is all really, really critical. And, what are the outputs for all of this? Well, good business is good for business, quite frankly. The UN report, United Nations report, which has been tracked for approximately 30 years, consistently shows that organizations with a higher purpose and a focus on sustainability perform better financially. The higher the ESG, the higher the profitability. Unilever reports that 69% of its brands grew. Those with a focus on sustainability and those that stand for something are outperforming others by 69%. And they are removing brands that don't have a purpose and don't have an objective as they move forward. And then there was a 2019 study by Oxford University, which basically was 200 source companies. And, they had sustainable, had solid sustainability practices and they had real purpose. And, the figures are there. They had 90% improved cost of capital, 88% improved operational performance, and 80% positive influence on shares. So, that profit bit that everyone's worried will drop off if you switch your focus over to sustainability, the opportunities are there. You may take a short-term hit, but we don't have a choice. We have to drive this forward. And then there's DuPont, who have been running their sustainability program for 30 years. And 11.8 billion in revenues from non-depleted resources is a fairly hefty number and one that we can't ignore. So good business is good for brand, it's good for people, it's good for profits, and it's good for the planet. So what are the practical things that marketers can be doing to go forward? Well, I would say to you, commit to staying on top of what is happening in relation to sustainability so that you can keep it on your strategic agenda. Look at and understand where you are right now and where you need to go. And consider your stakeholders. What do they want? And I know you do this already, and how can you collaborate and drive change? But customers and employees are so much more important now. And, we have to put that sustainable lens on everything we do and focus on your communications, both internally and externally, because you have to let everyone know internally what you're driving for so it can run through the business. And ask those different questions, think about it and think about how we move it forward. And use your skills to think about how we can do things differently. For me, things like the circular economy are a really exciting opportunity for marketers to really, really think differently. It's no longer about make, sell, dispose. It's about rethinking, it's re-commerce, it's repair, it's reuse, It's, recycle as a last resort. It's about leasing. It's about subscription. How can you make sure that your product, you think about the end of life of your product as well as the beginning bit? And how can you drive that through so that we don't keep putting things into waste and landfill? And then finally, just some useful resources that I thought I would share. Now, hopefully some of you have heard of Project Drawdown, but if you want to look at 6 very short videos which talk about climate solutions and how we've got to where we are and how we can make change, this for me was just 101. It's so simple and so effective. There's some books you can read. So Greener Marketing by John Grant, which is a fantastic book, all about everything it says on there. He speaks of his years of experience. There's a Circular Economy Handbook by Catherine Wheatman, who is an expert on the circular economy. And then at CIM, we've got a Sustainable Transformation Hub, which will house all of our courses and our content and our webinars and our podcasts in relation to sustainability. It's something that we're taking very, very seriously. We want to drive solutions to marketers to help everybody get sustainability on the agenda and drive it forward. And I'm at the moment leading with my stakeholders internally the development of the first diploma in sustainable marketing. So that should hopefully be coming out by the end of the year. Again, giving marketers who are currently enrolled the opportunity to understand more about sustainability and what they can do to drive change and have an impact. But also, as we are partnering with a lot of universities, we map our content onto their degrees, business degrees, and also marketing degrees. So I'm hoping that we can also inspire that next generation of marketers coming through, that marketing is a fantastic profession to get into. And then I have my the Marketing Save the Planet podcast, which myself and my co-author run. And, we have met some incredible people, from Catherine Wheatman on the circular economy to a company that made a no trace plastic solution. We've spoken to academics, we've spoken to marketers about storytelling. We even interviewed Philip Kotler a couple of weeks ago. So for anyone who's in marketing, that this is the man that is the sort of the grandfather of marketing. So these are some really useful resources. We also have our manifesto, which you can sign up to in our learning zone. And yeah, that's me. Thank you very much for listening today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gemma. That was brilliant. So we've got a few questions and mentions in the chat, but I think that gave a really good overview of where marketing sits for any organisation, how we as marketers and comms people can drive that sustainable campaign, so to speak, internally and externally. So we've had a comment here from Michelle saying marketing is a management function. Growth should not be at all costs. CMOs have a duty of care to the planet and our long-term impact on the environment. Bring the VOTC in, listen and understand that there is no plan B for marketing comms.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that was just power to the marketing people, that statement. Michelle's also got a question. So which businesses beyond Patagonia don't just talk the sustainability talk, but walk the walk? And is marketing or CEO/leadership teams instrumental in this?
I think to take your first part of your question is around, other than Patagonia, I think we need to be realistic. There is no organization that is a purist. There is no 100% sustainable organizations. It can't be done. But I think, as I said, I think the grocers are doing really, really well as an industry. I think IKEA is really driving some real leadership and different ways of reusing and renting their furniture and taking it back. So I think they're really driving down that sustainability route. Another small company, or not so small as it's growing, is Tony's Chocolonely. I think their sole mission is to make the chocolate business 100% slave free, and everything down to their chocolate bars, when you unwrap them and they put something under the wrapper which tells you exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it, down to the shape of their chocolate, I think is absolutely phenomenal. There are a lot of brands that are on that journey of sustainability. So yeah, there is a lot out there. And I think to answer the second part, it can't be done without leadership teams and CEO. Leadership is so important to drive this through. So everybody who sits at that top table has to understand what the challenges are. Only then can you drive that culture down through the organization. Only then can you really get that messaging out there? So they are instrumental to driving to your sustainability agenda.
I think that's a really good point, and it's always a battle in comms and marketing from maybe the management level and exec level. How do we, as day-to-day comms and marketing people, drive that change? And it is through the leadership and that sort of information that we can share and we can know. But like you said, we've got a part to play, not just from what we're producing, but what we're actually saying internally and externally to drive that purpose. And one statement that really resonated was stop storytelling and start story doing.
Yeah,
as comms and marketing people, it's very easy to go down the storytelling path because it's what we do best. You know how to communicate with people, but driving that actual purpose and the actions is a different story than actually doing the doing. So on the back of that, Sue Button has a question here. So story doing, how do you define that concept rather than storytelling? I'm seeking my next marketing role within the third sector, and the charity relies on sharing these emotive stories.
I think it's story doing. A lot of us story tell and we create that story, but it's, I guess for me, story doing is once you tell that story, it's really important to follow up on what you've said. It's really important to communicate the progress you're making. It's really important to take that back into your organization and show your employees the progress you've made, to show them where you have changed, how you may do something potentially. Show them how you've changed your product, show them how, talk about how, if you've gone through the circular economy route, how you're making a difference. But also then there's that bigger part of sustainability, isn't there, where you're giving back. So the well-being to maybe the societies or communities that you give to, or what it is your thing that you do to help that broader part of society outside of your business. And story doing is actually doing what you say you're going to do instead of just telling the story you think people want to hear.
And do you think from a greenwashing perspective, because that's where it sort of derives from, isn't it? Yeah. So when we talk about greenwashing, obviously I don't think many organizations do it out of actual purpose to greenwash and to sort of tailor people down a certain route. But is it down to a process that they're maybe not following? Do we need to look at and take a step back? Is there a rush for people to tell this story about the environmental initiatives they're doing as opposed to actually thinking about it and going through the motions like you said in your presentation?
I think sustainability's become a bit of a thing to try and differentiate yourself, hasn't it, in terms of trying to sell your products, which is kind of not the right thing to do, but it's becoming almost as a stick that label on and you've ticked that box and you're going to be better than the person you're next to on the shelf. And I think when it comes to that, there's this huge, I've interviewed someone recently and they called it a sea of sameness when it comes to sustainability, where everybody's sticking labels on. And I think it starts with the education piece. And that's the piece that sits at the absolute center of the work I do at CIM and also the work I'm doing with Can Marketing Save the Planet. Because unless you understand what's happening, how can you reliably communicate something, whether you're told to or not, or this is the way we need to go? And it's that education piece, because researching and writing the book, once you see these things, you can't unsee them. It really is. Once you understand the bigger picture and know what, you don't need to be a sustainability expert, but once you understand that bigger picture, it really does change your mindset. So education is absolutely where it starts, which is why we are trying to bring as many solutions as we can to help.
Yeah, and the resources you shared are brilliant. I know we at Resource behind Comms Hero, we're going on that journey ourselves, and the first steps and the insight we got from listening to yourself, Michelle, and Jihan and all the other people in the sort of know-how of sustainability is about educating yourself first before actually taking action, because until you do that, you might then fall into that trap of greenwashing and sending messages that you don't really know about, but it sounds right. So that's brilliant. I've got another question here from Asif. Are digital comms harmful to the environment? Is there a misconception that switching from print to digital is your sustainable comms utopia?
I think that I think there's a lot of reports out there. So digital comms do have a footprint. Everything has a carbon footprint. And I'm not a carbon, expert, but everything does have a carbon footprint. So, there is arguments for, when print is needed, but I think it's about anything. It's about the amount that you put out there. I think it's about stopping and thinking about the levels we seem to be in this world, we're just trying to put as much as we can down into our channels, and that does have a footprint. So think about what it is you're going to say and how you're going to take that down into the channels. So yes, everything does have it. I think pure digital is not necessarily always the way forward. It's like the argument on plastic. It's like, not all plastic is bad. Some plastic is good, some plastic is needed, but it's that level of I guess over packaging something, sticking it in 20 boxes when it can fit into one type situation. You know, everyone's obviously always, I'm sure everyone's received that Amazon box that's huge and it's got like a pen in it or something. You know, it's about reducing. I think reducing and rethinking how you do stuff.
Brilliant. And I recently listened to the podcast with Philip Kotler, and that was brilliant because he talked about demarketing. Yes. And obviously that was interesting from an actual comms and marketing perspective of production of what we actually output as marketers. But there's also that responsibility to educate ourselves from a sustainability point of view to educate the internal audience. So it's not just about what our output is as organizations, but also what we're telling and feeding people internally in that education. And
it was, I mean, all the way through that interview I did with him, I had to remind myself, you're 90, this is phenomenal. You know, it's like, he's so incredible. And he released an article a couple of days after we interviewed him on, maybe we need to make a choice as marketers moving forward. Are we going to be growth marketers or are we going to be sustainable marketers? And I think we have to make those choices, but those that go down that growth marketing route where they don't see anything other than the profit in the 3 Ps and the triple bottom line, then those businesses won't last long term, because their consumers will hopefully will turn against them and their employees won't want to work for them.
Bro, well, we've got time for one more question. I could talk all day and ask and pick your brains about this because I'm interested myself. But as a bit of a takeaway for everyone listening today, so what is the one takeaway you'd give for anyone looking to go on that journey or start that journey? Is it look at the resources? Is it go look at B Corp? What's the next step for us laymen?
I think if you're a business, then there is a B Corp assessment that you can do. It's free. We've got it on our learning hub, but also if you just go onto the B Corp website, there is that free assessment. It takes about 10-15 minutes to do if you're a business. And it is really, really eye-opening. So if you want to go down that journey, then absolutely, I would encourage anyone to go down then for B Corp status. But the number one thing I would say is start reading about it, start understanding it, start looking at, what is happening out there. But again, think about your role as a marketer and think about how much more, you can be doing as opposed to just communicating or advertising things. Think about how you can keep it on the agenda. Shout as loud as you can, back up if your senior management aren't listening. And I know that's easier said than done, but, keep that on the agenda and don't let go of it. Because I think marketing is the heart of any business. And, we are the ones that are both creative and strategic. And without marketing, there is no sort of other parts, that can reach consumers and can reach employees and bring back all of that, insight and knowledge.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gemma. And for anyone that hasn't already seen, we've dropped Gemma's book in the chat as well. So that's a great place to start. I've not yet read it myself, but it's on my read list next. So by all means, go check that out. So thank you again, Gemma. That was brilliant. So just before we sort of move on to the next bits, we've still got the competition up and running in the background. So don't forget to take a photo of yourselves at the table networking or behind the scenes in the sessions. We've got Sharpies, we've got notepads, got Pets at Home vouchers, we've got Comms Hero cards, we've got all sorts. So don't forget to put them photos on the hashtag. For every session available, there's 5 points as well that you watch towards your CIPR CPD points. And there's 200 in total available over the full week, which you can catch up on if you've missed any. So the next session starts at 10:15, and we'll be hearing from Penny Haslam speaking on making yourself a little more confident. So thank you for your presentation, Gemma. That was brilliant. And hopefully everyone took a little bit away from that at the very least.
Thank you, everyone.